After learning my parents left everything to my brother, I stopped paying their bills, and when Mom coldly texted "rent is due," my reply exposed a family secret no one expected. My name is Jake, and I'm 32 years old. Up until recently, I thought I had a pretty solid, if not perfect, relationship with my parents. Sure, I always knew they favored my younger brother Ethan, but I never thought they would take it as far as they did. Ethan has always been the golden child. Growing up, it was obvious he got away with things I never could. He received praise for the bare minimum, and when he messed up, my parents had a million excuses ready for him. He's just young, he's figuring things out, or, you need to be patient with him, Jake. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one, the mature one, the one who had to lead by example. And I did. I worked hard in school, got a decent job, and made something of myself. Ethan, not so much. At 28, he still bounces between jobs, constantly figuring things out. He's lived with my parents rent-free his entire life, yet somehow they act like he has it so much harder than I ever did. Anytime I tried to point out the double standard, I was met with the response, "Jake, you're independent, you don't need us the way Ethan does." That was their justification for every single thing. If I got a cheap birthday gift while Ethan got the latest gaming console, it was, "Well, Jake, you have a good salary now, you can buy it yourself." If I had to help out around the house while Ethan lounged on the couch, it was, "He's just not as responsible as you." If Ethan wrecked their car and they paid to fix it, but I had to buy my own first car with my own money, it was, "You can handle it, Jake." For years I swallowed it. I let it go. I told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. Then I found out about the will. I had been helping my parents financially for years, covering part of their mortgage, paying for home repairs, even chipping in for their medical bills. I never did it expecting anything in return. They were my parents, and I wanted to make sure they were taken care of. But one day, completely by accident, I learned that they had left everything to Ethan. The house, the savings, their belongings, everything. It happened when I was visiting to help them sort out some paperwork. My mom had left a folder on the kitchen table while she stepped away to take a call, and I glanced at it absent-mindedly. That's when I saw my name. Or rather, the absence of it. Ethan was listed as the sole inheritor. When my mom came back, I asked about it. I wasn't angry, not yet. I just wanted to understand. But instead of looking guilty or regretful, she acted like it was nothing. "Oh, that," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "We just figured it made the most sense. You have a good job, a stable life. Ethan, well, he's not as lucky. He's going to need the help more than you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So because I worked hard and built a stable life, I get nothing? Even after everything I've done for you? She frowned at me like I was being unreasonable. "You don't need it, Jake. It's just money. You'll be fine." Something in me snapped. For years, I had been their safety net. I had given, and the moment I stopped to ask if I mattered at all, I was dismissed like a greedy child throwing a tantrum. I realized then and there that in their eyes, I was nothing more than a resource, someone to rely on when they needed help, but never someone they truly valued. So I made a decision. I stopped paying their bills. I stopped covering their mortgage. I stopped sending them money for groceries, repairs, or unexpected expenses. If I didn't matter enough to be included in their will, then surely they didn't need my financial support either. It didn't take long for reality to hit them. At first, they didn't say anything. Maybe they thought I was just busy or that I had forgotten. But then, about a month later, I got a text from my mom. No greeting, no small talk, just, "The rent is due." That was it. No "how are you," no "hope you're doing well," just a demand, like I was their personal agent. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a mix of emotions: anger, hurt, disappointment. Then, finally, I replied. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't beg them to see how unfair they had been. I simply responded with, "I'm sure Ethan will handle it." That was all I said. No explanation, no argument, just a simple statement. Then I put my phone down and went about my day. It didn't take long for the backlash to begin. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed again, this time a call from my mom. I ignored it. Then another, and another. Finally, a text. "Jake, answer the phone." This isn't funny. I let it sit. I wasn't in the mood to entertain whatever guilt trip they were about to throw at me. But sure enough, when I finally checked my voicemail later, I got exactly what I expected. Mom's voice was dripping with disappointment. "Jake, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is really selfish. Your father and I have always done our best for you. Is this really the kind of son you want to be, ignoring us when we need you? Ethan can't afford to help right now. He's struggling. We thought you'd understand that. Call me back." I didn't. A few hours passed before I got the next message, this time from my dad. He rarely texted me, so I knew my mom must have gotten him involved. "Jake, we need to talk." This is serious. Call your mother." Still, I ignored it. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't before. Control. I had spent so long playing the role of the dutiful son, the responsible one, the one who never asked for anything. But the moment I refused to be used, they lost their minds. Then, as I expected, Ethan got involved. "Dude, what is wrong with you? Mom and Dad are freaking out. Just pay the rent like you always do. Why are you being so difficult?" I almost laughed at that, "like you always do," as if it was my job to keep a roof over their heads, as if the fact that he was their favorite meant that responsibility automatically shifted to me. I finally responded, but I kept it short. "Not my problem." The response came within seconds. "What does that mean? You can literally afford it. Stop being a jerk." I set my phone down without replying. It was incredible how quickly the entitlement came out. No, "Hey, are you okay?" No, "I didn't realize how much you've been helping." Just immediate anger that I wasn't keeping the ship afloat for them. I expected more texts, maybe a few angry voicemails, but what I didn't expect was what happened next. The next day, I woke up to a message from my aunt, my mom's sister. "Hey sweetie, your mom just called me in tears. She says you're refusing to help them and that they're at risk of losing the house. What's going on? I thought you guys were close." I sighed. Of course, the flying monkeys had arrived. I took a deep breath before responding. "Hey Aunt Lisa, I appreciate you checking in. I'd love to explain, but I think you should ask Mom why she left me out of the will completely while expecting me to pay their bills. Let me know what she says." There was a long pause before she finally replied. "Wait, what?" I smirked. That was my cue to step back and watch the fallout begin, because now it wasn't just between me and my parents. Now the rest of the family was about to find out exactly what had been happening behind closed doors, and I had a feeling my parents weren't going to like it. Lisa didn't text back right away, and I figured she was either trying to get the full story from my mom or just processing what I'd said. Either way, I wasn't going to chase after her for a response. Instead, I went about my day, enjoying the rare peace that came with not being at my parents' beck and call. But that peace didn't last long. By the afternoon, my phone lit up again. This time, it was my mom. "How could you say that to Lisa? This is a family matter, not her business. You're making us look bad." Ah, there it was. Not "we're sorry, let's talk about this." Not "I didn't realize how unfair this was to you." Just pure outrage that their actions were now being questioned by someone else. I waited a few minutes before responding. It became her business the moment you dragged her into it. If you don't want people knowing what you did, maybe you shouldn't have done it. That shut her up, at least for the moment. But then Ethan chimed in again. "Mom is literally crying right now. Do you feel good about that? Do you feel good about making your own mother cry?" I stared at the text, shaking my head. The manipulation was so blatant it was almost funny. Almost. If she's crying, it's because she's realizing that actions have consequences. Not my problem. I sent it, and this time Ethan didn't respond right away. Maybe he was running back to Mom and Dad, feeding them my words so they could all sit together and fume about how awful I was. Meanwhile, I was starting to realize just how much weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For years, I had been the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who picked up the slack when my parents coddled Ethan and let him skate through life without consequences. And what did I get for it? Nothing, not even an acknowledgement in their will. I'd sacrificed vacations, nights out, even put off buying a home of my own because I was always helping them out, and they never once appreciated it. I was done. A few hours passed, and then my phone rang again. This time, I answered because it was Aunt Lisa. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Hey, Jake," she said, and I could tell from her tone that she was treading carefully. "I just got off the phone with your mom." I waited, letting her continue. She told me a very different version of what's going on." I almost laughed. "Let me guess, she made it sound like I'm some selfish, greedy son who suddenly decided to abandon them for no reason?" There was a pause, and then a quiet sigh. "More or less." I leaned back in my chair. "Did she mention that I've been covering their bills for years? Or that they left me out of the will entirely while giving Ethan everything?" Another pause. "No. She left that part out." "Of course she did," I said, keeping my tone even. "Well, that's what happened." Lisa sighed again. "Jake, I had no idea. I really didn't. And honestly, I don't blame you one bit." That surprised me. "Really?" "Of course. Look, I love your mom. She's my sister. But she's always played favorites with Ethan, and I hate to say it, but I think she just assumed you'd always be there to clean up their messes. That you'd never say no." "Well," I said, "she assumed wrong." Lisa was quiet for a moment, then she said, I exhaled slowly, Now they figure it out on their own. I'm done being their safety net. Lisa didn't argue. In fact, she let out a dry little chuckle. Honestly, good for you. We talked for a few more minutes, and before we hung up, Lisa said something that stuck with me. I have a feeling this isn't over. They're going to try something. Be careful, Jake. She wasn't wrong, because later that evening I got another text from Ethan. Fine, if you want to act like a selfish jerk, go ahead. Just don't come crawling back when you realize you messed up. I stared at the message for a second before shaking my head. Messed up? I hadn't messed up a single thing. If anything, this was the first time in years that I was finally getting something right. But Ethan's text made one thing very clear. They weren't going to back down that easily. And part of me was almost looking forward to whatever they tried next. The next morning I woke up to a pounding on my front door. Not a polite knock, not even an impatient one. This was the kind of pounding that made you think someone was about to break the door down. I already knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. For a second, I debated just ignoring it, letting them stand out there and fume. But something told me that if I didn't answer, they'd just keep banging until the neighbors complained. With a sigh, I opened the door. Sure enough, there stood my parents and Ethan. Mom had her arms crossed, her face pinched with disapproval. Dad, as usual, stood slightly behind her, like he always did when she was in full attack mode. And Ethan? Well, Ethan had the same smug, self-satisfied expression he always wore when he thought he was in control of a situation. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Wow, this is unexpected. Mom didn't waste time. Jake, we need to talk. I let out a small chuckle. Oh, now you want to talk? Not when you were writing me out of the will, not when you were expecting me to keep paying your bills while giving Ethan everything. Now, suddenly it's urgent? Dad sighed, like I was being difficult. Son, can we come in? I pretended to think about it, then shook my head. No, I don't think so. We can have this conversation right here. Ethan scoffed. Are you serious? Dead serious. Mom huffed, clearly not used to being denied what she wanted. Jake, you're being childish. Childish, I repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's rich, coming from the people who showed up at my house unannounced, pounding on my door like debt collectors. Mom's face turned red, but she took a deep breath, trying to regain control. Listen, she said, shifting to what I called her guilt-trip voice. We know you're upset. We understand that you're feeling left out, but you have to look at this rationally. I actually laughed. Rationally? You want to talk about rationality after what you did? Dad, who had been silent up until now, finally decided to chime in. Son, you're doing well for yourself. You have a good job, a stable life. Ethan, well, he needs more help. I turned to Ethan, who was still standing there, arms crossed like this was all beneath him. He needs more help, I repeated. He's 28 years old, he's not a kid. He's had every advantage handed to him while I had to work for everything I have, and now, after all that, you decided he deserves to inherit everything while I get nothing? Ethan smirked. It's not my fault you didn't fight for it. I stared at him, genuinely stunned by how shameless he was. Fight for it, I repeated, my voice quiet. Fight for what? My own parents' love? My own share of what should have been an equal inheritance? Mom waved a hand dismissively. Oh, stop being dramatic. We just thought it made sense. You don't need the money, Jake. That's not the point, I snapped. It's not about needing the money. It's about fairness. It's about the fact that you used me for years, took my help, took my money, took my time, and then tossed me aside like I was nothing when it came to the one thing that should have been fair. Mom's eyes flashed. Jake, we are your parents. We raised you. The least you could do is show us some respect. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. Respect? You want respect when you've shown me none? Ethan rolled his eyes. God, you're so dramatic. You're seriously throwing a tantrum over this? You're acting like you're some poor, struggling victim. I turned to him, my voice ice cold. You really want to talk about struggling, huh? When's the last time you had to work a full-time job without Mom and Dad bailing you out? Oh wait, you never have. That wiped the smug look off his face, but before he could fire back, Mom cut in again. Enough, she snapped. Then she took a deep breath, smoothing out her features. Look, Jake, this is not how I wanted this conversation to go. But the reality is, you're family, and family takes care of each other. I could practically hear the trap she was setting. Uh-huh, I said, not giving her anything. She sighed, as if this was exhausting for her. The mortgage is due. I tilted my head. And we're a little short this month. I couldn't help it. I actually laughed. Are you serious? After everything you just said, after standing here defending your choices, you're still asking me for money? Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. Jake, we're asking you to do the right thing. There it was. The manipulation, the guilt-tripping, the expectation that no matter how badly they treated me, I would still come running when they needed me. I took a deep breath, looked each of them in the eye, and said, "No." Mom flinched, like I'd slapped her. "Excuse me?" I said no, I repeated, my voice steady. "I'm not paying a single cent. Not now, not ever again." Ethan let out a low whistle. "Well, so that's it, huh? You're just going to let your own parents lose their home over some petty grudge?" I stared at him. "You live there too, don't you? Maybe you should step up and pay for once in your life." His face darkened. He had a selfish Jake. Mom, however, wasn't done. "Jake," she said, her voice dangerously low, "do you really want to do this? Do you really want to walk away from your family over money?" I met her gaze without flinching. "That's funny," I said, "because from where I'm standing, you walked away from me first." She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. "You made your choice. You chose to leave me out. Well, now I'm making my choice, and I choose to be done." I stepped back and without another word shut the door in their faces. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then I heard Mom's muffled voice through the door. "This isn't over, Jake." I smiled to myself. No, it wasn't. Because something told me they were about to learn just how badly they'd messed up. I didn't expect them to leave right away. My mother wasn't the kind of person to back down when she thought she was owed something. Sure enough, less than a minute after I shut the door, the knocking started again, this time louder, angrier. "Jay, come!" Mom's voice was shrill, barely muffled through the door. "You're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret this." I leaned against the door, arms crossed, listening to her rant. Dad, ever the quiet follower, muttered something I couldn't quite make out, probably trying to calm her down, but Ethan, ever the golden child, had no such patience. "You're such a selfish piece of garbage, you know that?" he shouted. "All those years we took care of you?" That actually made me laugh. I swung the door back open, just enough to glare at him. "You took care of me. That's funny, Ethan, because I seem to remember working 2 jobs in college while you had Mom and Dad paying your rent. I seem to remember lending you money that you never paid back. I seem to remember bailing Mom and Dad out while you sat around doing nothing." His smug expression wavered, but he quickly recovered. "Well, I was the one they trusted with their estate, wasn't I? Maybe you're just mad that you weren't good enough." I clenched my jaw, inhaling sharply. This is what he wanted. To get under my skin, to make me react, to make me lash out so that I'd be the one looking like the bad guy. I refused to give him that satisfaction. Instead, I simply smiled. "Good luck with that estate then. I'm sure it'll be real helpful when you're struggling to pay the mortgage next month." I shut the door again. This time, they didn't knock. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard my mother's voice, lower this time, but still carrying that same venom. "This is not over, Jake." I smirked. "Yes, Mom," I muttered under my breath. "It really is." The next few days went by in a blur of tension. I expected them to try something, maybe send a passive-aggressive text, maybe get my extended family involved. But to my surprise, nothing came. No calls, no emails, no word from anyone. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, but instead, it felt like the world had just shifted. I wasn't constantly on edge anymore. I wasn't hearing my mother's guilt trips or my dad's weak apologies. It was like they had all vanished, and for once, I could breathe freely. Then, 2 weeks later, I came home from work to a small envelope stuck to my front door. It was white, unmarked, with nothing but my name scribbled across the front in my mother's familiar handwriting. I tore it open, expecting something passive-aggressive or manipulative, and I wasn't disappointed. "Jake, this is your last chance. You're throwing everything away for pride. Ethan may have been chosen as executor of the estate, but you are still family. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Come to your senses. You'll regret it. No signature, just the same tired threats." I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash without even a second thought. A few more days passed, then I received another message. This time, it wasn't a letter. It was an email from my mother's address. "Jake, I really thought you'd come around. You're the one who always told us family is everything. Now you're turning your back on us. We're struggling. We need you. Ethan's making a mess of things. Please, let's fix this before it's too late." This time, I actually felt a little something. Anger. The audacity to make me feel guilty about their mess, to pull that old card about family is everything when they had chosen Ethan over me from the start. I took a deep breath, then I deleted the email without replying. It was then that I realized something. I wasn't mad anymore. I was just done. And yet, I still hadn't heard from Ethan. He was silent, his arrogance replaced with something more desperate. I had to admit, part of me was surprised. Ethan, the one who had always believed he was untouchable, wasn't making a move. I half expected him to show up at my door with an apology, but he didn't. Then, one afternoon out of nowhere, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something told me I should pick up. I answered, and sure enough, it was my mother's voice again. "Jake, please." She was crying. I could hear it in her voice, and I was taken aback. "You need to come over. Ethan's lost the house. He's messing everything up. We have nowhere to go. Please, we need you to help us." For the first time, I felt nothing. No sympathy, no guilt, no obligation. I almost felt a strange sense of relief. This was it. This was what I had been waiting for. Instead of responding immediately, I let the silence linger. I could feel her desperation across the phone, her need for reassurance, for me to step in and clean up Ethan's mess. But I wasn't about to be dragged back into that cycle of manipulation. "No," I finally said, my voice calm. "This is your problem, Mom. You've always wanted him to be the golden child, and now you get to deal with the consequences of that choice. You chose him to handle everything. You trusted him. You don't get to pull me into your mess now." She was quiet for a long moment, then she whispered, "Jake, please. I don't know what else to do." I didn't even flinch. I spoke my next words as coldly as I could. "You should have thought of that before you decided I wasn't good enough to be part of the family." I hung up. The phone didn't ring again for weeks. I didn't hear from anyone. But strangely enough, I felt better. The weight of years of resentment and manipulation had finally been lifted. And then, one day, while I was at the store, I saw a familiar face in the parking lot, my father. He was walking toward a beat-up car carrying some bags. I hadn't seen him in weeks. I debated whether to approach him, but something told me that nothing was left to fix. I just turned away, ignoring the way he called my name. That was the last time I saw him. So here I am a year later. I haven't heard a single word from my parents or Ethan. Part of me wonders if they're still struggling. Part of me wonders if they ever realized what they did wrong. But honestly, I'm okay. Maybe, for once, it's time for me to take care of me.